Hey guys, what's up? Hope you're doing well. Sorry I look a little rough right now. My hair's like in that process of drying still, cause just got out of the shower like half hour ago. Clearly this is not my apartment. Had some duties to fulfill for Uncle Sam this weekend, so we're filming this a little late in the eve, but anyways, I just want to jump right in because have some activities want you guys to do, and then obviously I want you guys to have time to talk with your small groups. So if you guys want to open up your Bibles, we're going to be focusing on Acts 21 through 23. I know the Delight book goes through 24, so definitely, like, if you haven't already read 21 through 24, definitely don't forget 24. It is an important chapter, and there is a lot to digest in that as well. But just for time's sake, we will be looking at Acts 21 through 23. So this week we will be talking about creating an honor culture. So I want to begin with just that question of what is honor? For the scholars, Dictionary.com defines honor as honesty, fairness, or integrity in one's beliefs and actions. So that's a pretty solid definition. I feel like that's a very generic definition of honor. That's kind of what I think too. Someone who's honest and fair, obviously lives with integrity. So that's solid. And then it's kind of funny. I just want to point this out because this is my life. But the U.S. Army defines honor as living the Army values. So like on this chart here, you can see like loyalty has its own sentence and duties like fulfill your obligations, and they're all very specific. And then honor is, just live up to all the Army values. Just do it all. Like that's honor. So I think that's funny because it's like, too much work, all the above. But it do be like that, right? Like honor is enormous. So for, I would say, the majority of this talk, we're gonna kind of look at how the Bible defines honor, because I think it definitely reflects aspects of Uncle Sam's definition as well as Dictionary.com. Like it definitely incorporates all of those definitions, but I think there's more to it. There's a lot more to honor than this, and I think especially biblically there might be some surprising things about honor that the Bible has to say about it. So let's investigate. Let's take a peek at the end of Acts 20. So here Paul is about to leave his homies in Ephesus. And so just to read here, verse 36 through 38 says, "When Paul had finished speaking, he knelt down with all of them and prayed. They all wept as they embraced him and kissed him. What grieved them most was his statement that they would never see his face again. Then they accompanied him to the ship." Oof, like whoa. I know when I first read that, I really had to like sit in that for a second and just imagine like what that would be like. Imagining how beautiful those prayers were, how deep they were, just the grief that Paul and his homies were going through. It's tough. And it even describes, so in chapter 21, verse 1, it specifies that when Paul left, they had to tear themselves away from them, right? So like that line just reminded me of like a sticker, like peeling a sticker off of something and it leaving like that residue. I just kind of connected that with like Paul's like leaving like bits and pieces of his heart like with his friends in Ephesus. And I just thought that was so heavy and relatable too. And so like even still in 21, right? Still in chapter 21, Paul says a similar goodbye in verse 13. So this time, Paul is about to head out for Jerusalem, and his loved ones were literally pleading him not to go because of how dangerous it was going to be. So Paul was pretty shaken up, and he says, why are you weeping and breaking my heart? Like telling them he's ready to endure suffering, even unto death, if it's what the Lord wills. Whoa. So that's pretty crazy. And so I guess something to think about is like, we've all had to say goodbye. But have you ever had to say goodbye in order to pursue the Lord's callings? Now, this could be, like Megan talked about the Lord's callings, and it could be something as simple as going to college, right? Like we all had to say goodbye to our parents, our grandparents, our siblings, right? Like our friends we made in high school. Surely like that's not easy, ever. So just think about that. Like think about that tonight too. It's like, when have you had to say goodbye in order to pursue the Lord's callings? Because if you can't think of a time right now, you're probably going to say goodbye in the future in order to pursue the Lord. So, I don't know, just be thinking about that. I know for me, last year on September 8th, I had to say goodbye to one of my best friends I'd made in training. We had gone through it all together, like 9 months, right? 9 months of smoke sessions, yelling, physical, mental challenges, right? Like we went to like the lows of like sleeping in the rain to highs of getting our airborne wings pinned on. I mean, we read the Bible, like we studied Revelation together, we ate together, we worked out together, like we were roommates, right? So I was with this girl all the time. And now she's active duty, meaning instead of going home after training like I could, since I'm National Guard, she had to stay at our barracks for a few months before she was sent to her duty station all the way in Italy. So I just remember like the last day before we parted, she spent the entire day with me. We had our graduation ceremony, and afterwards we spent time like taking pictures and doing our normal like everyday ordinary shenanigans. And when I was about to leave, she followed me all the way to the bus, and she began to cry and just kept repeating how much she didn't want me to leave. And it was really breaking my heart. And I felt like Paul in that moment, that why are you weeping and breaking my heart? Like I knew like I wouldn't see her in a long time, and like it's been 223 days since I've seen her, and that count's just gonna keep going up. And so that was just such a hard goodbye. But I knew I had to go home. I knew I had to go home. I knew God had other plans for me. Like, I couldn't have stayed. So, now, you guys are probably thinking, like, what does saying goodbye in order to pursue God's plans have to do with honor? And I think something to think about is that the Bible clearly shows grief is a mark of honor. Like, honor is so powerful that it can hurt. And thinking about just other evidence in the Bible of this, like, Jesus had to say goodbye in order to fulfill God's plans, right? Like, he had to do this when he went to the cross. I know Kirsten talked about when it was around Easter time, and she jumped on the Delight Instagram. She talked about Jesus having to leave his friends, Jesus having to leave his life, like, surely, like, he was human too. Like, he was fully God and fully human. And so, being human, he had to feel all the feels. And it's not easy. Like, grief is painful. But it's also honorable. Like, my roommate from training, we had such an honorable friendship, and that's what made leaving her so hard. So I think, contrary to like the early definitions of honor being brave and wonderful and happy, like, yes, honor can be those things for sure, but biblically, like, if you are going through a time of grief, honor is still there. So yeah. So just to kind of transition from that, kind of gonna go a little off course here. But I kind of want to look at the route Paul took in order to get to Jerusalem. So I just want to say, like, each of these places on this map have meaning. I think it can be hard to put ourselves in Paul's shoes, but like, think of it this way, right? Um, like Paul's, like, I think it's Tyre. I don't know how to pronounce these cities very well, but like, that's his Fort Wayne, right? Like, his Patara. Probably should have looked that up before I filmed this, but here we are. Basically, like, that's his Indianapolis, right? Like, these places have meaning, and every continuation of the red arrow demonstrates another goodbye. But it also demonstrates Paul's obedience and trust in God to follow his lead. So, moving on in this wonderful story, when Paul reaches Jerusalem, things get a little wild. The Jews are making some big and exaggerated claims about how Paul is, and I quote, verse 28, teaching everyone everywhere against our people and our law and this place. Yikes. So, like, obviously that exaggerated claim leads to some crazy stuff. So, like, try to imagine the scene, right? So, verse 30, the whole city was aroused, and the people came running from all directions. Seizing Paul, they dragged him from the temple. Oof. It's actually kind of sad how we can low-key kind of imagine that. I don't know if you guys pay attention to the news or what's going on, but our nation hasn't been super peaceful lately. So if you can kind of imagine, like, the whole city, people running everywhere going for this one guy, for Paul. That's a pretty crazy scene. And thankfully, all of this madness was noticed by the Roman troops. So the commander and soldiers show up, and the people stop beating Paul. So that's great. Heck yeah. Intimidation. Love it. Also, fun fact, this commander, right? We don't really know the commander yet, but his name is Claudius Lysias. And I might be butchering that, but he was in charge of anywhere from 600 to 1,000 men. So, like, converting that into our generation's army rank, this commander would be a lieutenant colonel, right? So an 05. Y'all, God willing, when I graduate, I'll be a second lieutenant. So I'll be a butter bar. So that's an 01, right? At the very left. So the fact that this commander translates to having the authority of a lieutenant colonel is wild. right? Like, this commander was a big deal, and it's interesting to see that it's him who takes control of this uproar in the city. But I digress. So here's where honor really starts to break through. So verse 33 and 34, the commander arrests Paul, but he sends Paul to safety, to the barracks, because he couldn't get to the truth due to the uproar. He even orders soldiers to carry Paul in order to protect him from all the crazy, like, violent mobs. So that's pretty cool, just itself, right? Like, can you imagine, like, the police carrying someone to safety because of all the violence? I mean, that's pretty cool in my eyes as a soldier, right? So Paul's in the barracks, he's safe and sound, and he asks the commander if he can speak to the people, and the commander's like, all right, sure. So we're gonna dive into Paul's tactic of, like, him speaking and how he speaks, and kind of just his tactic, like, soon. But first I just want to focus on the commander and his troops. So after Paul speaks, the crowd gets rowdy again, and Paul gets sent back to the barracks. So second time. And here the troops prep for an interrogation and for him to be flogged. So this is when Paul breaks the news that he's a Roman citizen. And acting out of honor, a centurion, just butchering that. I'm just gonna say a soldier, right? I apologize, y'all. A soldier, who would most likely be compared to, like, a captain today, right? So in 03, he reports to the commander that Paul is a Roman citizen, and the commander orders the interrogation and withdrawal immediately. Like, it says, like, withdrawal immediately. And that detail itself is pretty big, like a flogging, right? Think about, like, how much planning that would take and soldiers that involved, and, like, they were gonna do it, you know? And so for the commander to be like, the commander could have easily said, he should have told us earlier, flog him, right? The commander could be like, we already have everything set up, just do it anyways. But instead, he does the right thing. He acts with, integrity and honor, and he withdraws immediately. And so at the start of chapter 23, Paul starts speaking to a council in, like, a trial-like setting. And during this spiel, a fight broke out between the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And guess what? Verse 10, the dispute became so violent that the commander was afraid Paul would be torn to pieces by them. He ordered his troops to go down and take him away from them by force and bring him back into the barracks. Wow, back to the barracks, third time's the charm. So, just imagine that, like, this court breaking out, big fight, and they're gonna tear Paul to pieces. Guys, that's kind of crazy. And again, the commander just steps in, and he's like, nah, you're not gonna tear Paul to pieces, because I'm here, and I'm gonna protect him again. So he uses his power of being a commander and authority to honor Paul. Again, that's just super cool to me. And so while Paul's chilling in the barracks, God's promise to protect Paul, like, pokes through, because Paul's nephew comes up and informs him that he heard some Jews were scheming to kill him. So having this knowledge, Paul's like, yo, Captain, excuse me, sir. Please take my nephew to Lieutenant Colonel Lysias, because he's got something to say to him. So the commander allows the nephew to explain, and hearing there were more than 40 Jews waiting to ambush Paul, he provides horses for Paul to go to Governor Felix in order to get the heck out of there. Like, the commander goes all the way to write a letter to Governor Felix for Paul, explaining why he was sending Paul to him. Whoa, like, this commander and his soldier and his captain demonstrated some serious honor. Like, so, I mean, just think about that, y'all. Like, he writes to the governor a letter saying, yo, like, this is why I'm sending Paul to you, just, I don't know, just crazy the details of what all how the commander decided to help Paul. And so that brings me to the next point of like, honor seeks truth. Okay, so the commander could have easily not pursued the truth, right? He had the power to flog Paul. He could have kept him in chains if he really wanted to, but instead he gave Paul a chance. Like, he wanted to do the right thing. And so, are we pursuing truth in our relationships? Like, are we the friend who immediately talks behind someone's back without knowing the entire story? Are we being defensive instead of seeking truth? This point ties really well into Mac's point to like honor first and defend later. And this isn't always easy, right? I'm a big protector. Like, when it comes to people, I get like really fired up when I see injustice. Big justice girl, right? But I need to be careful with this, because even though loyalty runs deep, I need to hear every side of a story before I decide to stand for someone or something. I need to first consult with God on situations before I build my defense. Like, James 1:19-20 asks us to consider to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So there is righteous anger, but we need to be checking if that's something we're pursuing or if it's like a worldly anger. And we need to be really chasing after the truth in order to honor our relationships, including our relationship with God. So we've spent quite a lot of time on the commander, but now let's analyze Paul here. So did you guys notice how Paul waited until he was about to be flogged to tell the soldiers he was a Roman citizen? Like, Paul could have told the soldiers after he was arrested from the first riot, right? But instead he's tactful, he's humble. He chooses to be bound in chains in order to have the opportunity to speak. And I believe the commander realized this, because after Paul told him he was a Roman boy, right, in verse 30 of chapter 22, it says the commander wanted to find out exactly why Paul was being accused by the Jews. So, like, Paul had the commander hooked and curious. But Paul chose to suffer. He rejected comfort. He chose to be seen as a crazy outsider in order to share the gospel. He chose humility because he wanted to honor God. So humility is also a mark of honor. And to dive into the Delight book a little bit, on the top of page 194, Mac defines biblical honor as the values love and respect. And I agree with this. We can demonstrate these values in a practical sense by accepting that honor can cause grief. Maybe even celebrate the next time we have to say goodbye, knowing it is difficult because it's a friendship of honor. We can also show honor by chasing after the truth. And lastly, honor can be portrayed by choosing to be humble. Conducting frequent heart checks, conversing with the Lord, giving our best effort. Like, we can fulfill Mac's third point of using honor as a weapon to display God's love for the world by doing these things. And so I want to end by reading a paragraph from the Delight book on page 192. Paul knew the kingdom power of honor. He knew that honor meant recognizing the God-given value of every person, even if they would ultimately cause him harm. My own experience has shown me that often in the very midst of trying to bless or honor someone, we will be ostracized or misunderstood. We have to decide now. Is it a waste? Is honor a waste if it doesn't get us the results we desperately want? Something to think about, something to pray about. So take this time to really reflect on your relationships. Have you been unaware of pride, maybe just sneakily crawling into your friendships? Maybe you've been keeping score, telling yourself, I'm not going to reach out because I always make the plans. I always reach out. Or maybe you're the friend who has simply gotten so caught up that you've forgotten about your people. Maybe you're the one who hasn't reached out. What do your friendships look like? And would they be defined as a biblically honoring friendship? And more importantly, more important than friendship is your relationship with the Lord. God should be honored because he's God. He doesn't need an explanation, right? He is God, and he should be honored because he's God. But even if you wanted to find reasons to honor God, there's too many to list, infinity. There's an infinite amount of reasons to honor God, but definitely honor him because he's God. So yeah, I guess, have we forgotten about God lately? Have we forgotten about our friends lately? Have we forgotten about our family? Who are we forgetting right now? Are we treating our enemies with honor? In what ways does God honor us? These are just some questions to chew on, right? Really reflect on your friendship with the Spirit. If we aren't being a good friend to Jesus, how can we be the best friends to our people here on earth? Our Father deserves our honor. The people in and out of our circles deserve our honor. So let's really dig deep and meditate together. But let's pray. Sweet Lord, thank you so much for honoring us. Thank you for community, for letting us meet together. Thank you for giving us a school to learn and grow at. God, when we reflect, we're able to see all that you do for our good, and help us bask in gratitude for your constant sacrifices. Help us believe that what you have said is what you have done. Teach us to let go of comfort. Teach us to learn how to do hard things in order to trust you deeper and share with others the life-changing news of Jesus' sacrifice. Teach us to honor humanity, not just our family or friends, but our enemies too. I boldly ask that with your help, our honor can display your love, attracting others to a life with you. Father, you're so good. Keep us safe within this crazy world and keep us passionate for your attention. We all love you so much, and we ask these things in your most wonderfully brave Son, Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. What I would like you guys to do right now is to write a letter. I was just talking to my small group last week, and we talked about obviously Paul, and just how cool it is that he wrote letters. What if he didn't? What if he was yeah, I'm not feeling this letter to the Church of Corinth, so I'm just not gonna write it. Isn't it kind of crazy to think Paul's letters, we're reading those things. So every letter matters. So even if you're not a big writer, maybe you've never written a letter before, that's totally okay. But I want you guys to write a letter. And it can be to anyone. It can be to the Lord. It can be to a friend. It could be to a family member. Anyone in your life who you feel you haven't been honoring. And you don't have to give it to them. like definitely like don't feel pressured to give it to them. You know, this could just be something that can help you simply reflect on your friendships. It can help you like kind of figure out maybe a friendship you've been struggling with. You know, it can be a prayer. Like, think about who really needs this letter, and write it. Just write it. You can crumple it up, toss it, just throw it away afterwards. That's fine. But really reflect on who you haven't been honoring, and reflect on why you haven't been doing that, and write to them. So yeah, that's all I got. Sorry guys, this is a little longer than I would like it to be, but really appreciate you guys listening, and yeah, I'll see you guys later.